Hi, I'm Colin Hung with HITMC, and today I'm sitting down with my friend Larry Kaiser, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Optimum Healthcare IT. Larry was the winner of 2020's Health IT Marketer of the Year. So, Larry, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Colin, thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
So, Larry, I'm going to ask a few questions. I got to ask you this because I don't think I've actually ever asked you, but how did you get started in healthcare marketing?
It was one of those random job applications way back in 2005. I applied for a newly created proposal manager position at a company called Keen. And I had a long history of RFPs from previous positions, and they were trying to improve their process. So that's how I got into healthcare IT 15 plus years ago.
RFP writer, I love it. So you mastered the ability to do cut and paste, right? Like that, because a lot of the answers at RFPs in those days were like.
Well, at the time, I always, Keen doesn't exist anymore, so I guess I can say this without anybody getting upset. But at the time, their proposals looked like a third grader turning in a book report. It was in a black binder with no cover, with manila envelopes, with the dividers you had to write on the little white tab things and slide them into the plastic. It was not a pretty sight.
I remember that.
And they had two separate EHRs. So every RFP we got was two responses, one for each system.
I remember those days writing those RFP responses, and yeah, I never enjoyed it. So kudos to you for for doing that as a job 100% of the time. But okay, so you got into healthcare in 2005. What made you stay in healthcare? Because it's not an easy industry.
It isn't, and I had been in the telecommunications industry prior to that with companies that did software for call centers. And when I got into healthcare, I had met a few people outside of our organization attending HIMSS, and I got a really great piece of advice was that if you can stay in healthcare, stay in healthcare, because it's just going to continue to grow and evolve. And, Keen was later acquired in 2007 by a investment firm that stripped them down to next to nothing and then eventually sold them to NTT Data. And I survived 7 workforce reductions and so forth to get to be to run that marketing department. So a lot of it was sheer luck, and a lot of it was trying to take some advice and stay in the industry.
So now that you've been in the industry for a while now, I mean, what gets you excited most about being in healthcare marketing specifically?
I love that it changes pretty much every day. Mm-hmm. If you go back to 2005, and you had not that many EHRs in the market, and they were thick, gooey, really tough to use applications that were solely based on either a Unix or an AS400 platform, to the conversion to the web platforms, and then just a constant churn of not just new technologies, but new legislation and new needs. It allows me to focus on something different every single day for the most part, across at least where I am now, on different service lines that we offer and so forth.
I'm gonna geek out with you for a minute, but I used to work on AS400s as well, and those 3-letter command line codes, right? In those days, I still remember some of those. But yeah, I mean that's going back a ways when EHRs ran on those systems.
Yeah, it was a lot to learn the functionality back then to really build out that RFP database, without going back to development and test and programmers all the time. And the evolution of the education has just been rather astonishing. I compare it to the industry I was in before, which was software that recorded phone calls and call centers. It used to be, I'm going to record this extension on this day for this amount of time, to now I'm logging into a phone on my computer and I'm recording you all day, every day, because you're logged in on the soft phone, and it was continuous recording. It's just the evolution. It's been very interesting and educational to go back and think about what it was 15 years ago to what it is today. And, I learn something new every day, and I can appreciate that.
So let's go back a little bit and kind of, if we looked across your marketing career in healthcare, is there a project that stands out? Is there something that really you kind of go, boy, I really enjoyed that project, or I'm really proud of that particular project?
There's been a lot of different projects, campaigns I've been proud of as I've moved from, an RFP writer and moving up that ladder and so forth. I joined Optimum 4.5 years ago, and I built the marketing function from the ground up, started with a logo and a really old website to where it is today. And that still is, even though it's a little bit newer than 15 years ago, it's still my most rewarding project, because that was honestly the first time I had built it from the ground up. I'm very, very proud of the work. Yeah, from the ground up, I'm proud for all the work we did, from the work we still do. But that was a huge undertaking, and I was very thankful for the opportunity that leadership at Optimum gave me to do that and to be successful doing it.
Yes, you're right. We often, it's at small companies is a little different, but it's not a common project to be able to revamp a website completely, or to redo a brand, or to come up with new brand messaging. It doesn't happen that often. And so when you're able to lead a project like that, it is quite satisfying when you see at the end the output, right? The website, the logo, the brand, new branding. So not surprised. That sounds like it was a great project.
It was fun. It was rewarding. And, I think the best part of it is when you are the person to guide a project like that and you get it to fruition, then you realize, okay, now we have to go back and keep churning and keep redefining and keep changing, to keep evolving, to keep being ahead of the competition. So that's what it's continued to be the last couple of years, and doing it again right now for early 2021. So it's very exciting.
Well, brand is always evolving, right?
Yep. If you get stale and if you don't evolve, you get forgotten.
Right. Yeah. Or worse yet, we've all been there, right? We've been to some of the sites where we visit and you got to go, wow, 1990s calling. Your website needs to, your website.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, we don't want to be, that would be horrible if anyone ever said that about a website that I was looking after. So, but yes, you're right. It's always evolving. So Larry, let's talk about the award. So you won the award for HITMC for Health IT Marketer of the Year. What was it like to win that award?
It was humbling. It was satisfying. It was surprising. I'm sure I could put any number of other adjectives around it there. I've only been really active in HITMC for 2.5 years or so, I think, maybe 3. I think 2.5 sounds more accurate. And it's a great community, and I've met so many great people that I've built good relationships and friendship with. And, I looked at the award. Yes, it's an individual award, but as I told my team, I said, this is a team award, because while I'm the leader of our department and in charge of all the strategy and everything, I work with all of you to execute that strategy and those ideas. So while, yes, I won the award, it's a team award for for myself and my team. And then they were all very excited that I got it. My wife has a great video of me being super surprised when you guys announced my name for that. But it feels good. Again, I started in healthcare. When you start off in healthcare for 15 years and, you work so hard to continue to advance your career, it's a lot of hard work, and it felt good to be recognized for that. And it's something I'll always be appreciative of.
No, it is great. And you're so right. It is, even though it is an individual award, I mean, none of us would be where we are or have the success we have without the team of people around us. So good for you to recognize that. And, it's great to hear that your team was so happy for you. We were certainly very happy when the results came back. We're like, oh, couldn't think of a more deserving person in 2020 to get the award.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that.
So let's kind of look. What advice? I mean, you and I have met many times at various HITMC events. We've spent a lot of time chatting about various marketing tactics. But what sort of tidbits or advice would you give to someone who maybe just starting out in healthcare marketing? So maybe not somebody who's new to marketing as a whole, but somebody who's new coming into healthcare, which obviously is certainly the case now more than ever, because with COVID and everything else, a lot of people are coming into healthcare. So what advice would you give to someone in that situation, Larry?
Well, it's funny you asked that question, because I was actually just asked that same question by somebody getting into healthcare IT marketing for the first time, maybe about a month and a half ago. And so what I told them more than anything is the marketing is really secondary. You have to educate yourself on the market and the environment in which you are, marketing in, understand kind of where the market is today with the various software vendors and the legislation that's come in place, what was in the past, what got us to where we are, understanding what's coming in the future and how that affects the product or service that you're marketing. Because it sounds, marketing principles are marketing principles. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in, right? You're going to do a SWOT analysis no matter where you are. You're going to do social media no matter where you are. You're going to do branding. You're going to do all that stuff, but it's specific to the market. And you have to understand and appreciate the people that are in it, what they've been through, what you can do to improve their business in some way with the product or service, how you're affecting patient care, how what's coming through, legislation is going to affect all that stuff, and it may affect your company. So really, the number one piece of advice I give is really research and understand the market, do reading, subscribe to the blogs, subscribe to the websites, newsletters, and so forth, and understand what's going on around you. It'll ultimately help you be a better marketer in the end.
I was just going to ask that, because healthcare is pretty intimidating. We love our acronyms. There's tons of regulations, right? I was just going to ask, how would you suggest someone go about to learn it? It sounds like blogs and just reading and subscribing to newsletters is one of the things that you would suggest. So are there other suggestions you have about learning our industry?
Prior to COVID, because again, I've been busier now in COVID than I was before, and I was always busy, but I'm super busy now. I spend a lot of time on webinars if I have free time, watching webinars from various companies, various organizations. If you go back to when I started, even when you started in healthcare IT, a lot of those publications don't exist anymore.
Right.
Healthcare informatics and health data management and various other ones have all combined to be either larger conglomerates or acquired by HIMSS. So, HIS Talk is one of my favorite places to go to because it's just a collection of so much stuff. It was one of the very first pieces of news that I read in healthcare IT, and I found it very informative. Healthcare IT Today, of course, does some great articles and very educated there. And really, Twitter is my favorite place these days. But ironically enough, if you go back to my very first HITMC that I joined in New Orleans, that was 18, I think. Yeah. 18. When I got there, I had no idea what to expect. And I always used the comment. My Twitter account was locked. If you wanted to add me, I had to approve you. And when I left that HITMC, my Twitter account was unlocked. And I had this greater appreciation for Twitter. And since then, talk about an explosion of people following me following those people. And then from there, the people they follow, because if I'm curious what's going on in healthcare, I can go, scroll my Twitter feed and find an article or people commenting. If I want to know what's going on the front lines of COVID, I can find nurses and doctors talking about it. I don't have to go to mainstream media to find that stuff. And so ultimately, HITMC is what allowed me to appreciate Twitter for really what it could be. And I get so much information from frontline workers and just people who are in the industry and so forth. So, yeah, number 2 piece of advice: unlock your Twitter and make sure you follow and read on it.
Well, you're a man after my own heart because, yes, totally, Twitter has become a great news source. And I think it's different when you're using it for the industry you work in, right? Because then you know who the trusted sources are. You know who you can tell the difference between, a real account, if you will, a real doc, as opposed to someone who maybe is adjacent to the industry and not really in the industry making commentary about it. So, but yeah, Twitter it's always been a great news source. I would say, to your point, it's sort of like a secondary one, though, right? You kind of have to start with the blogs and the webinars and get your feet kind of grounded in all the terminology, and then you get to the fire hose. That's Twitter, right? Because I think if you started Twitter, I think you may be like even more overwhelmed with the amount of information.
Open the fire hose and
That's
take the water. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, not to get into the world of, I'm right, you're wrong type of thing, but I'll take things I find on Twitter and put them on other social media networks and say, hey, if you really want to see what's going on somewhere, follow this person, read his posts. He is world renowned, or he's at a hospital, he's a doc, and he'll tell you what's going on. Don't necessarily believe everybody else is telling you. Go to the front line. And very helpful, very educational. And
well, because we know in healthcare, I mean, if healthcare workers are discouraged from using social media, right? So when they go to social media, there's something going on, right? There's something that's not getting out there.
They have something to say, and it's important.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Totally with you on that. So let's, Larry, let me ask you this question. We're getting to the end of our time, but if we look ahead to 2021, what are some of the things that you're expecting from a marketing standpoint or from a healthcare standpoint as we look into next year?
Well, I think obviously the most important piece right now, of course, is the vaccine for COVID-19 and seeing how that goes. I mean, the first doses are arriving across the country today. I think a critical care nurse was the first person in New York to get it. So I think that's going to be probably the most important healthcare news, not just healthcare IT, but healthcare news on how quickly the country gets, vaccinated. Same thing in Canada for you.
Right.
So I think that's first and foremost. What I'm very curious to see, even as we, if you want to dub the first doses today being the beginning of the end of COVID, we hope. I'm curious to see how it's going to affect healthcare by the middle of next year. For years and years, telehealth was a buzzword. I wrote a blog post for our website at the end of 2018, kind of saying, is 2019 finally the year that we're going to have, a widely adopted telehealth? It should have been 2020 because we had the pandemic. So I'm curious to see if it's going to stay. That's I'm very interested about, is if it's going to stay, and ultimately how that's going to affect people with their insurance. As a prime example, my wife did a telehealth with a doctor, and our insurance just recently told us they don't cover telehealth for that service, which is interesting, being that everybody's doing telehealth for every kind of service there is right now. So I'm curious how that's going to then affect insurances and so forth. And so that's a big one for me. I'm very, very curious about that. I've actually enjoyed the use of telehealth. It's been very useful, and I've had some great conversations with doctors and so forth. That's a big one for me. And then I'm really interested to see how soon we get back to in-person events. I already know that the Chime spring event is probably not going to happen. Is HIMSS going to happen?
Yeah,
everybody. That's
in August.
The multi-million-dollar question in August. Is are we going to get to have our 45,000 person event in the middle of the year for our industry? That's going to be a very, very interesting thing if it happens, and if it doesn't, then we're in the same boat as we were this year. So, but in-person events are kind of what we thrive on. We're in marketing, right? We thrive on it. From an organization like Optimum, that face-to-face interaction and social events and so forth, that's really what drives the relationships, which ultimately drives the pipeline. I'm sure all of our friends at HITMC really want to see each other.
Absolutely.
And, actually have a hug, and sit down and have a drink and be able to talk to people face to face. You get to miss that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I think definitely there's a strong desire, having been a year without in-person events now, and maybe longer for sure, that there will be a strong desire to get back together. I just, what I don't know, like you're asking, is whether events are ever going to come back to the same level they were. Like, will we always have hybrid events now, where there's an in-person component and an online component too, right? And will shows like HIMSS be smaller in person because of that, right? So there won't be 45,000, there's only 30,000, still a big conference. But we now have 20,000 people or 25,000 people online, right? So it'll be interesting to see. And I certainly think that there will be some form of healthcare conference in 2021 that's in person. I'm banking mostly on those regional kind of events. But I wonder when the larger ones will come back. Mostly because I'm more worried about budget, right? Like, who's got the budget to send people, right?
Exactly, because so many organizations that went to HIMSS that we're going to go to HIMSS this year lost money, and because there were no in-person events, people's pipelines are probably affected, which affects budgeting for the next year.
Exactly.
So, and then even if we have them, you're going to have to prove that you were vaccinated to attend. So it all comes back to the same components, and it's going to be, if 2020 was an interesting year, 2021 will hopefully be better, but will also be a very interesting year just to see how everything unfolds in recovery from 2020.
Yeah, totally with you on that. I'll be very interested to see what happens next year in terms of in-person events. But thank you for taking the time today, Larry. We're out of time, but love speaking with you. Congratulations again on winning the 2020 HITMC Award. And thanks for sharing a little bit more about your background.
Of course, I appreciate that. Always great talking to you, buddy.
All right. This has been Colin Hung at HITMC, along with Larry Kaiser, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Optimum Healthcare IT. Thanks for listening.